I arrived at my own wedding, only to see my cousin walking down the aisle in the dress I designed, on the arm of the man I was supposed to marry. He didn't flinch. He didn't explain. So I didn't cry. I waited. And at Grand Gala I took the stage, played the audio and buried them with evidence. They stole a wedding. I took their future. Elena arrives at the Grand Hotel expecting her wedding, only to find her cousin Leah walking down the aisle in her dress. The groom Caleb doesn't even acknowledge the betrayal. She freezes, becoming the center of whispered gossip. The hotel staff greeted me with practiced smiles, unaware that I was the bride. Or so I thought. As I stepped into the grand marble foyer, the concierge gave me a strange look, a flicker of discomfort before quickly returning to a professional nod. It unsettled me, but I brushed it off. Maybe they were overwhelmed. After all, this wedding was a big deal. Caleb had spared no expense. I looked down at my invitation again. Venue: the Kingsley Grand Ballroom. 4 p.m. I was right on time. Clutching the soft ivory envelope, I adjusted the strap of my silver clutch and headed toward the elevator. My heels clicked with precision, echoing faintly through the hall. When the doors opened, I stepped inside and pressed the gold button for the top floor. This was supposed to be my day. My wedding. And yet, when the elevator opened to the ballroom level, the atmosphere was already strange. Music was playing softly in the background, violins, something classical and slow, but the energy was off. There were murmurs, subtle and sharp, like the rustling of 1,000 secrets. I walked toward the ballroom entrance, confused by the open doors. Why were they already open? Why was I not being ushered in? The doorman barely glanced at me. Instead, his gaze flicked to someone behind me and then quickly away. I stepped inside. And the world tilted. The aisle was covered in rose petals, soft blush and cream, scattered perfectly like the mock-ups I'd sketched months ago. Gold chairs lined either side, filled with guests dressed in their finest. The soft scent of fresh lilies and jasmine wafted through the air. Then came the music shift. A soft swell. Pause. The moment just before the bride walks in. I froze. Because I wasn't walking. Someone else was. She appeared at the far end of the aisle. Poised. Delicate. Radiant. Wearing my dress. My custom design, the one I had spent weeks perfecting. Every stitch, every pearl, every curve of the silhouette. It was mine. The exact one I had sent to the bridal atelier with my initials embroidered inside. And wearing it was Leah, my cousin, walking toward the altar. And standing there, waiting with his signature smug smile and effortless charm, was Caleb. The man I had been engaged to for almost 2 years. The man who had kissed me just 3 days ago and whispered, "I can't wait to see you walk toward me." My knees buckled, but I didn't fall. I stood, frozen. A statue in the back of the room, while the guests, all of them familiar, either avoided looking at me or looked straight through me. The music soared. The bride smiled. Caleb took her hand. It wasn't a joke. This wasn't a rehearsal. There was no confusion or mistaken identity. This was real. Caleb leaned forward and kissed her cheek as she reached the altar. Applause broke out among the guests. A few clapped hesitantly. Others glanced toward me, then quickly away. I felt like I was watching someone else's life, or rather, the theft of mine. I couldn't breathe. I took a slow, disbelieving step back. My hand brushed the doorframe for support. Everything blurred at the edges. There was a sound, a microphone crackling. Caleb's voice filled the room. "Thank you all for being here today to celebrate love." He went on about destiny and fate, speaking confidently, like he hadn't left me in the dark. Like I hadn't spent the last week preparing for this moment. When did they plan this? How long had they known? The officiant asked them to exchange vows. Leah's voice quivered with emotion. Caleb wiped a fake tear from her cheek and said something about second chances and finally choosing right. Choosing? He never even chose me, did he? No one stopped the ceremony. No one called my name. No one asked what I was doing standing there at the back of the room, looking like an uninvited guest at my own wedding. I turned slowly, swallowing the bile rising in my throat, and left. I didn't cry. Not yet. Not here. Not in front of them. The marble floors outside the ballroom were too polished, too bright. My heels echoed with every step, louder than the applause I had just walked out on. It wasn't until I reached the hotel lobby that I realized I was holding my breath. I exhaled sharply. The shock hadn't worn off. If anything, it had deepened, like I was sinking one invisible inch at a time. I stopped in front of a glass display of wedding cakes and stared, unseeing, at a multi-tiered design that looked suspiciously like the one I'd picked in a bridal magazine months ago. Even that had been stolen. Elena Moore, a voice said behind me. Smooth. Male. I turned, startled. He stood at the edge of the marble counter like he belonged in another world. One where betrayal didn't happen in designer gowns. Dark suit, crisp shirt unbuttoned at the collar, no tie. His presence felt deliberate. And when his eyes met mine, something flickered behind them. Recognition. "I'm sorry," I said cautiously. "Do I know you?" "Not officially," he said. "But I know who you are." I took a step back. "And how is that not creepy?" A faint smirk touched the corner of his mouth. "You're the one who just walked out of a wedding you weren't supposed to be a guest at. Or the bride. That makes you a little famous around here." I felt the sting in my chest. "So you saw it." "Only the aftermath. I don't attend tragedies," he said evenly. "But I watch how people respond to them." I narrowed my eyes. "Still not less creepy." "Fair enough." He extended a hand. "Jasper Reed." My hand hesitated before meeting his. His grip was warm, firm, and oddly steadying. "I need to sit down," I muttered. "There's a bar through the hallway." He nodded to the side. "Private. Quiet. No wedding guests." I looked at him, unsure. He raised an eyebrow as if to say, "What do you have to lose now?" My pride had already been incinerated in front of 200 people. What was one more impulsive decision? "Fine." I followed him down the hallway, away from the noise and glitter of the grand ballroom. The hallway lights dimmed slightly, casting long golden shadows over the patterned carpet. We entered a low-lit lounge tucked discreetly off to the side. As promised, it was quiet. He motioned to a seat at the far end of the leather booth and walked toward the bar. I sat numbly watching him order. Moments later, he returned and slid a glass in front of me. I stared at the amber liquid. "You didn't ask what I wanted. You didn't look like you knew." He wasn't wrong. I took a sip. It burned, exactly the way I needed it to. "So," I said quietly, "you enjoy watching people get destroyed at their own wedding?" He didn't flinch. "No. But I've seen worse." "Is that supposed to comfort me?" "No," he replied. "But you don't need comfort. You need clarity." I blinked at him. "You don't know anything about me." He leaned back against the booth, folding one arm along the top. "I know Caleb Wright is a man who plays long games. And I know Leah Moore isn't a stranger to sabotage." My chest went tight. "You know them." "I used to work with Caleb," he said casually. "Invested in his startup back when he was all charm and no structure. Your cousin joined him later, just before they ghosted me, and took 2 clients with them." My glass froze midair. "They what?" He nodded. "Used me as a stepping stone, then cut me out." I didn't take it personally at the time. But then I started hearing things. Patterns. Leah worming her way into places she didn't belong. Caleb making promises to one woman while courting another. He looked at me directly. "I didn't know you were part of the fallout until today." My hand gripped the glass tighter. "I don't understand," I whispered. "Why would they do this? They could have just ended things." "Because people like that don't just want what they need," he said simply. "They want what someone else already has." Silence settled between us. He didn't ask me how I felt. He didn't offer platitudes. He just let the silence be what it was. Heavy, jagged, real. "I feel like I'm underwater," I murmured finally. "Like everything around me is moving but I can't." "You'll surface," he said. I glanced at him. "What makes you so sure?" He swirled the contents of his glass once before saying, "Because the fact that you're sitting here breathing and not screaming, that means you're still in control." I let out a weak laugh. "I don't feel in control." "Then scream." I blinked. "What?" "Not here, obviously," he said dryly. "But when you're ready, scream. Throw a chair. Destroy something. It'll help. You don't have to be calm, you know. You don't owe anyone composure." That was when it hit me, how quiet I had been. How obedient. How still. Even when I saw her in my dress. Even when Caleb didn't even look surprised. Even when my aunt smiled and looked away. I'd stood still. "Why are you doing this?" I asked softly. Talking to me. Offering whatever this is. He hesitated. Because I wish someone had done it for me. My throat tightened. I don't want pity, I said. Good, Jasper said. I don't give it. The clock above the bar ticked softly. Outside, I could hear the faint rumble of a party in full swing. Champagne corks. Laughter. Celebration. In a way, it made me want to vomit. I closed my eyes. I can't go home. My phone's blowing up. They're going to want statements. Gossip blogs are already calling it a mystery switch. My face is probably going viral. Jasper leaned forward, resting his arms on the table. Then don't go home. I looked at him. Come with me, he said plainly. Just for tonight. Clear your head. Yell into a pillow. Or throw it off a balcony. Doesn't matter. I stared at him. And what do you get out of this? He tilted his head. You assuming I want something, says more about them than me. Fair. Still, he must have seen my hesitation because he added quietly, I'm not saving you, Elena. I'm just offering you a ride out of the fire. For a long moment I said nothing. Then I slid the half-empty glass away and stood. I hate every inch of that ballroom, I said. If I stay in this city another minute, I'm going to do something stupid. He nodded. Then come. And without another word I followed him out of the hotel. Not because I trusted him, but because I needed to breathe again. I didn't know where we were going and I didn't ask. Jasper drove with one hand on the wheel, his gaze calm and steady as the city lights faded in the rearview mirror. The road stretched ahead, winding out of downtown and into the coastal hills. With each mile, the tension in my shoulders unraveled bit by bit, not gone but loosened. I sat in silence, fingers curled in my lap, the hem of my ruined dress wrinkled beneath me. Eventually, the road narrowed, flanked by whispering pines, until the air began to smell like salt and night jasmine. The ocean shimmered faintly to the left, a dark undulating mass beneath the stars. He pulled up to a set of iron gates that parted silently as we approached. Beyond them was a long paved drive lined with glowing path lights. And at the very end, nestled into a cliffside overlooking the sea, stood a mansion bathed in soft golden light. Modern lines. Stone walls. Glass that caught the moonlight. I blinked, thrown off. This place is yours? Jasper didn't look at me. Not originally. He parked, cut the engine and stepped out. The cool night air hit me the second I opened the door, making me shiver. I followed him up the short stone path to the main entrance. As soon as the doors opened, warmth wrapped around me. The entryway was spacious but not grandiose, designed for comfort, not to impress. Polished wood floors. Cream walls. A large abstract painting above a circular sitting area. Everything smelled faintly of cedar and sea breeze. Come, Jasper said quietly, walking past the foyer. I followed him into a sunken living room with floor-to-ceiling windows. The view beyond was breathtaking, the ocean stretching endlessly, waves breaking against the rocks far below. You've been here before, he said. I turned to him sharply. What? He nodded toward the glass. You used to play on that cliff when you were little. There's an old swing still hanging from a tree near the edge. My brows furrowed. How would you know that? Jasper didn't answer. He simply walked toward a bookshelf built into the wall and pulled something out. A small photo frame. He handed it to me. I stared. It was an old photograph, slightly faded. A snapshot of me as a child, no older than 6, sitting cross-legged on a blanket beside a woman with kind eyes and a laughing mouth. My mother. Behind us, the ocean. The cliffside. This very house. I traced the edge of the frame with my thumb. This was here. This was your mother's favorite retreat, he said. Your grandfather bought the land when she was still in university. He spent every summer here. After she passed, the property was transferred, and then quietly sold off. To whom? To a holding company, he replied. Shell corporations. Paper trails meant to be lost. But I bought it back 2 years ago. My head spun. Why? His eyes met mine. Because I knew someday you'd need a place that still remembered you. I didn't know what to say. You can stay here as long as you want, he added. No one else lives here. And no one, not Caleb, not Leah, can touch it. Something inside me cracked again, but this time it wasn't from pain. It was something closer to grief. Or gratitude. or both, tangled together so tightly I couldn't separate them. "Come on," Jasper said gently. "You need to rest." He led me down a hallway lit with soft sconces, then opened a door on the right. The guest bedroom was warm and elegant, light cream bedding, seafoam green curtains that fluttered slightly in the breeze. There were books stacked neatly on a corner shelf, a glass vase holding dried lavender on the windowsill. And above the desk by the far wall, another photograph. This one in black and white. A family gathering. My grandfather. My mother. And Jasper's grandfather. My breath caught. I turned to him. "You're connected to them. Our families used to work together," he said quietly. "Back when your grandfather was still a professor and my grandfather was publishing research in bioethics. They co-authored papers. Had joint patents. You and I were in the same room once. You were 4. I was 6. I don't remember," I whispered. "You cried when someone took the last cupcake," he said with a small smile. "I gave you mine." I sat slowly on the edge of the bed, overwhelmed. Everything I thought I knew, my life, my engagement, even my memories, was shifting like sand under my feet. How much have I lost without realizing it? I murmured, staring at the photo on the wall. Jasper didn't answer. Instead, he crossed the room, opened the nightstand drawer, and pulled out another frame. "I found this tucked behind the books in your mother's old studio." It was another picture. A younger me, tangled hair, missing teeth, holding up a sketchpad proudly while my mother knelt behind me, laughing. At the bottom of the frame, in her handwriting, "Elena's first masterpiece, age 8. She'll design her future no matter what." I didn't notice the tears until one landed on my wrist. Jasper placed the frame gently on the nightstand. "Rest." "I'm not tired," I said, but my voice was thick with exhaustion. "You don't have to be strong here," he said. That did it. I lay back on the bed without another word, curling on my side, the photo still in my hand. The salt of my tears mixed with the soft scent of lavender. My eyes grew heavy, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I let myself fall asleep. Not into nightmares, but into memory. I woke to the sound of gulls outside the window, their calls echoing over the distant crash of waves. For a brief golden second I forgot. Forgot the wedding. Forgot the dress. Forgot Caleb and Leah and the look in their eyes when I walked in. Then it came flooding back. I sat up slowly, the blanket twisted around me, the old photo still resting on the nightstand beside my pillow. My mother's handwriting stared back at me. "She'll design her future no matter what." I pulled the blanket tighter and rose. The soft robe Jasper had left hung neatly by the chair. I slipped it on, padded barefoot across the warm wooden floor, and opened the door. The hallway was quiet. The light was softer now, coastal morning light filtered through sea mist. I found him in the study. He was standing at a wide window, a tablet in one hand, sipping from a ceramic mug. Papers were scattered across the large oak desk behind him, neat but clearly not arranged for show. He didn't turn when I entered. "Good morning," he said. "There's fresh coffee. Help yourself." I found the pot in the corner of the room and poured a cup, then sat across from him at the long table. For a moment we both sipped in silence. Finally I asked, "Do you always start your mornings surrounded by old files?" He gave a slight smile. "Only when they belong to families destroyed under suspicious circumstances." I froze mid-sip. He set the tablet down and finally looked at me. "I didn't want to show you this last night," he said. "You needed rest. And now, you need answers." He slid a thin stack of manila folders across the desk toward me. I stared at them. The first tab read, "More Family Estate Holdings 2001 to 2018. "That's when my parents were alive," I said slowly. "And just after they died." Jasper nodded. I cross-referenced property transfers, company filings, and tax audits. Most of it looks clean on the surface. But when I dug into the fine print, he tapped the folder. "Your family's primary estate was transferred within weeks of your parents' car accident. The buyer was a holding group owned by a man named Harold Kensley." I blinked. "That's Caleb's uncle." "Exactly." I opened the folder. The pages were filled with photocopies, highlighted portions, stamped signatures, and my parents' names. "This can't be legal," I murmured. "Most of it is, technically," he said. "But the timing is suspect. What's more, Your mother's research patents, the ones filed through her lab, were reassigned to a private company 2 months after her funeral. What company? He looked at me. Leah's mother is listed as the majority shareholder. My hand tightened on the edge of the desk. I don't understand, I whispered. Why would she? My aunt and my mom were sisters. Family doesn't guarantee loyalty, he said gently. I stared down at the page, my eyes tracing the typed names, the sterile formatting of betrayal. She always told me Mom didn't care about the business, I said. That she let it go. That she didn't want me involved. Jasper hesitated. Elena, he said quietly, that was never true. I looked up. I knew your mother, he continued. Not well, but I met her several times. She was fierce, intelligent, obsessively protective of you. When my grandfather visited her here, they spoke about building something together. Something sustainable, independent. She did want you involved. My voice cracked. Then why didn't she tell me? He exhaled. She died too soon. The silence that followed was heavy, full of memories I couldn't recover and questions I'd never be able to ask. I started looking into it 2 years ago, Jasper said, folding his arms. After I saw Leah's name pop up in a patent dispute. It reminded me of your family, and the way they disappeared from the industry conversation overnight. I kept digging. Why didn't you say anything? I didn't know how. You were still with Caleb. Still surrounded by them. I swallowed hard. I feel like I don't know who I am anymore. You do, he said. You just weren't allowed to remember. I turned back to the papers, flipping through pages of quiet corruption, of dates that didn't add up, signatures that felt forged, names that shouldn't have been there. And in the margins, Jasper's notes. I ran my hand over them. They erased her, I said numbly. My mother. Everything she built. They tried, Jasper said. But she left you enough to rebuild it. I looked up. I can't do that alone. His gaze was steady. You're not alone. For the next hour we went over everything. The shell companies, the quiet stock transfers, the manipulated wills. It was like peeling back layers of rot. And the deeper we went, the more my stomach churned. You're sure they all knew? I asked finally. Jasper didn't hesitate. Caleb's father signed 3 of the documents. Your aunt's name is on 2 others. Caleb and Leah were young, but they benefited. They still are. My hands shook as I closed the final folder. And then I stood. I walked to the window, pressing a hand against the cool glass as the wind whipped across the ocean below. The same ocean I used to build sandcastles beside. The same one where my mother once promised I could be anything. I had believed her. I still wanted to. Behind me, Jasper didn't speak. He let me stare at the water for as long as I needed. Because he knew I was mourning something bigger than betrayal. I was mourning the pieces of myself I'd been told never existed. It was late afternoon when I stepped away from the study and found myself wandering toward the back terrace. The sea stretched endlessly below, sunlight glittering against the waves like thousands of broken promises. Behind me, the mansion was still quiet, too quiet for someone trying to make sense of the ruins of their past. I heard Jasper's footsteps before I saw him. I was thinking, he said as he joined me at the railing, you should stay. I turned to him. Here. Yes. At least until things calm down. The press is already picking up what happened at the hotel. I folded my arms. Of course they are. Your name's trending on 2 gossip sites. They're calling it the bridal switch. I didn't laugh. Couldn't. He studied me for a long moment. You don't have to go back into that world right now. Stay. Let the noise die down. Let them wonder where you are. And in the meantime? He shrugged. You let me keep you safe. That word, safe, hadn't meant anything to me for a long time. It had always been something I was supposed to provide for others. My aunt, Leah. Always the peacemaker. Always the one holding things together. But now I was broken glass trying not to cut anyone. I looked at Jasper. You don't have to fix me. I'm not trying to. Then why? He paused. Because I know what it's like to unravel in front of people who think they've already won. Before I could answer, the doorbell rang. We both turned toward the hallway. Jasper's jaw tensed. Wait here. He disappeared through the archway. I stayed, hands tightening on the stone ledge. A few moments passed. Then his voice, sharp and low, reached me from inside. No. She's not interested. Pause. You had your chance. You humiliated her. This isn't a negotiation. Another silence. Then the sound of the door slamming shut. Jasper returned, brushing invisible lint from his sleeve. Caleb sent a courier. With flowers and a note. I didn't ask what it said. I didn't want to know. Instead I said, "You didn't even ask if I wanted to read it." He looked me dead in the eye. "Do you?" I hesitated. "No." Then I made the right call. He turned and walked away, leaving me alone with the wind and the distant call of seagulls. By nightfall clouds had rolled in fast, heavy and thick with the scent of rain soaking the air. I was curled up in the guest bedroom, staring at my mother's photo when the storm broke. Lightning cracked across the sky. Thunder rolled in close behind, shaking the windows. Sleep didn't come easily. When it did, it wasn't gentle. In the dream I was back at the hotel. Everyone was looking at me, laughing, pointing. Leah stood on the stage holding Caleb's hand, wearing my dress, and my voice wouldn't work. I screamed, but no one heard. The lights dimmed. The walls fell away. I was sinking into the floor. I woke with a gasp. The room was pitch black. My heart thudded violently in my chest. I reached out blindly, half expecting Caleb's voice to whisper some excuse. Instead I found only silence. I sat up, pushing sweat-damp hair away from my face. The door creaked open. Jasper stood there, framed by the hallway light, barefoot in black sweatpants and a t-shirt, a cautious look in his eyes. "I heard you," he said softly. I swallowed hard. "Just a dream." He didn't come in. Not at first. "Do you need anything?" he asked. I opened my mouth, closed it, then whispered, "Can you just stay?" He nodded once. Quietly, Jasper stepped inside and sat on the upholstered bench beneath the window. He didn't touch me. Didn't ask questions. Just stayed. The thunder rolled again, softer now. For several minutes, neither of us spoke. Then I said, "Do you think I'm stupid for not seeing it sooner?" "No," he said simply. "You trusted people who didn't deserve it. That's not weakness. That's their shame, not yours." His voice was calm. Grounding. "I feel like my whole life's been a lie," I whispered. Jasper looked out the window. "It probably has." I gave a weak, breathless laugh. "You're not exactly reassuring." "I'm not trying to be. I'm trying to be honest." Silence settled between us again. Finally he stood. I thought he was leaving, and I don't know why, but that made my chest ache. But he just pulled the blanket higher around my shoulders. "You're safe here," he said quietly. "For as long as you need." Then he turned and left, closing the door behind him with a soft click. And for the first time in weeks I let myself drift back to sleep. Not because the storm had passed, but because someone had finally stood still, and stayed. The storm had passed. Morning sunlight filtered through gauzy curtains, turning the guest bedroom into a soft watercolor of golds and blues. I blinked against the light, my body heavy with a sleep I hadn't had in years, deep, dreamless, untroubled. Until memory returned. I sat up slowly, brushing my hair back as the scent of brewed coffee floated through the hallway. I padded quietly down the corridor, barefoot in the same robe from yesterday, and found Jasper in the same place I always did. His study. Only this time his face was different. Sharper. Focused. There were new folders open on the desk. A flash drive plugged into his laptop. He looked up the moment I stepped inside. "You're up." "I heard the coffee," I said softly. "Help yourself," he replied, nodding toward the pot. "You're going to need it." The edge in his voice made me pause. I poured a mug and walked slowly toward him. His screen was filled with emails, highlighted lines, chain threads, scanned documents. "What is all this?" Jasper stood and turned the laptop toward me. "Proof." I blinked. "Proof of what?" He clicked open a folder labeled, "Inheritance Fraud, 2018. The first document was an email from my aunt to her lawyer, dated 2 weeks after my mother's accident. "Make sure the language is clean. If she asks questions, remind her of the mental strain she was under. She'll sign it eventually." My mouth went dry. "She?" I asked. "You," Jasper said quietly. I stared at the line again, nausea rising in my throat. "I didn't sign anything." "No," he confirmed. "Because they never gave you a chance." He pulled out a printed sheet. "Look at this. It's a version of your mother's will, unsigned." It names you as the sole heir. This version never went through probate. Because? I asked, dreading the answer. Because they submitted this version instead, Jasper said, handing me a second document. This one was signed. Dated. Stamped. It split everything, assets, patents, stocks, between your aunt and a trust under Leah's name. You were listed only as a dependent. My vision blurred. They used me. They used your grief, Jasper said, his voice hard. They isolated you. Caleb made sure you stayed distracted. Meanwhile, your aunt convinced the court you were in no state to manage a company, let alone an estate. I gripped the edge of the desk. How long have you known? Jasper hesitated. I had suspicions a year ago, but I didn't get access to the sealed records until last month. I hired a private investigator. One of the best. He turned the screen again. Photos. Documents. A map of registered office addresses tied to shell corporations. Leah's name is on 3 of these companies. Her mother's on 2 more. All of them used to funnel assets away from your mother's trust. I couldn't breathe. I'd spent years thinking I was the forgotten daughter of a brilliant woman, passed over, ignored, too emotional to lead. But I hadn't been forgotten. I'd been erased. They said it was for my own good, I whispered. That I wasn't ready. They made sure you wouldn't be. I looked at Jasper. Why are you doing this? Because she deserved better, he said. She. Your mother, he replied quietly. And you. I looked back down at the forged documents. A slow, dangerous heat began to rise in my chest. I had been devastated yesterday. But today, I was furious. This isn't just betrayal, I said. It's theft. It's fraud. He nodded once. It is. I want to fight back. You will. I stepped back, pacing the edge of the room. How long will it take to build a case? That depends. On how public you're willing to be. On how much you want to expose. I stopped in front of the window. Outside, the cliff stood tall against the rising waves. Unmovable, weathered, but still standing. Like my mother. I thought of her voice. Her laugh. The way she used to run her fingers through my hair and whisper, "You're going to design something no one can take away." I turned back to Jasper. I want everything. Every paper trail. Every court record. Every lie. His expression didn't change. But something flickered in his eyes. Approval, maybe. I've already started. I crossed the room, lifted the unsigned will into my hands, and stared down at my mother's name at the top. I won't let them rewrite her legacy, I said, my voice low but firm. Jasper stepped beside me. You won't have to. I never believed revenge could be elegant. Until that night. I stood in front of the mirror in a black velvet gown I designed myself just days earlier. The neckline was clean and sharp, the silhouette sculpted with quiet command. I didn't want to look pretty. I wanted to look untouchable. Jasper adjusted the clasp of his cufflink as I stepped into the hallway. Everything's ready? He nodded. Mic check, stream connection, screen link. All in place. You speak and we go live. The proof loads in real time. What about backup? I've mirrored it to 3 cloud servers. Even if someone cuts the audio feed, the stream will keep going. And the documents? He pulled a small remote from his pocket and pressed the side. A screen lit up with the first slide. The original unsigned will from my mother naming me as sole heir. Slide 1, Jasper said calmly. Then comes the forged version. Then the internal email from your aunt's lawyer. Followed by corporate transfers to shell companies. Leah's name front and center. I took a deep breath. I don't want to scream tonight, I said. I want them to whisper in fear. He looked at me like I'd already won. You will. The Wright Foundation's annual charity gala was held at the same city landmark it always had been, the Crystal Hall. The venue glittered from the outside, its glass walls aglow with chandelier light and social climbing. I walked in precisely 35 minutes after the event began. Alone. Heads turned like clockwork. Whispers immediately followed. He came. He dares. Evening gowns and tuxedos swiveled toward me. I gave no smiles. No nods. Just a glance that dared anyone to speak. I saw her near the fountain display. Leah in a pale blue tulle gown, radiant on the surface but tight in the jaw the second she spotted me. My aunt flanked her, holding a champagne flute with fingers that clutched a little too hard. Elena, my aunt said first, blinking with exaggerated surprise. How wonderful to see you here. I figured since you stole my wedding, I said coolly, you wouldn't mind me borrowing a party. Leah flushed. We didn't steal anything. You've left. Right, I replied softly. And now I'm back. Before they could answer, a young host from the charity team tapped the mic near the stage, wincing. Apologies for the interruption, our MC is delayed. We'll begin the live auction shortly. Is there anyone who'd like to say a few words? Jasper, standing to the side of the ballroom, subtly raised a brow. I smiled. Yes, I said, stepping forward. The crowd quieted instantly. I walked onto the stage and took the microphone with the kind of calm that only comes after you've burned in silence. Good evening, I began. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Elena Moore, daughter of the late Diana Moore, researcher, founder, and philanthropist. I wasn't scheduled to speak tonight, but I felt inspired. A hush fell across the ballroom. Leah's knuckles whitened around her glass. For years, I said, my family name faded quietly from the public eye. After my mother's death, I was told her legacy had dissolved. I believed it. I was young, grieving, alone, and unfortunately, trusting. I lifted the small remote Jasper had handed me. A projector screen behind me came to life, illuminating the ballroom walls. The first document appeared. My mother's original will, naming me as sole heir. This was never filed, I said, turning back to the audience. Because someone didn't want it to be. Instead, I clicked again. The forged will appeared. Signed. Dated. Fraudulent. This was submitted instead. In it, my inheritance is diverted. Conveniently split between my aunt and a trust under my cousin's name. Gasps rippled across the room. My aunt's face stiffened. Fake, she said aloud. I smiled thinly. Let's find out. The next slide was an email exchange, dated 2 weeks after my mother's death. The highlighted lines read, she's grieving too much to question anything. File the altered version. Make sure she signs nothing. We can say she declined the role later. A stunned silence followed. Then I clicked once more. Audio began to play through the ballroom speakers. It was a recording of my aunt speaking in a phone call Jasper's investigator had obtained. The girl was always too soft. It wasn't hard to turn Caleb against her. He's predictable. Tell him what he needs to hear and he'll do what's convenient. Leah wearing that dress was the final seal. No turning back after that. The crowd erupted. Cameras lifted. Phones clicked. Whispers became shouts. Is that real? Did she just say Caleb was manipulated? She set Elena up on her wedding day? I stood tall. I came here tonight not for revenge, I said calmly into the mic, but to return something that never should have been lost. My name, my legacy, and my mother's truth. I paused. I will be reactivating the Moore Research Foundation effective next week. With full rights, full ownership, and full accountability. My gaze scanned the room. Not everything can be stolen. Not forever. Behind me the screen slowly faded to black. I handed the mic to the stunned MC and walked off the stage without looking back. Jasper was there waiting near the curtain. Perfect timing, he murmured. 3 media outlets started streaming 10 minutes ago. It's already on Twitter. I exhaled slowly. The ballroom was chaos now. People murmuring, reporters texting, half the guests openly filming Leah and my aunt as they tried to smile through gritted teeth. As I passed by, Leah moved as if to speak to me. I stopped. Don't bother. Elena, she began. You walked down the aisle in my dress, I said. You stood beside a man you stole. And now you're standing in front of a legacy you buried. I leaned in. Smile wider. The world is watching now. Then I turned and left, heels clicking like punctuation marks behind me. My phone had 386 unread messages. That was the number I saw when I woke up the next morning and rolled over to check. Headlines, tags, video shares. The live stream from the gala had gone viral. Every fashion blogger, media site and business page had picked it up. Heiress exposes families will fraud live on stage. Cousin of Breedgate. Leah's inheritance meltdown. The comeback of Elena Moore. Calm, calculated, unshakable. My name wasn't just a whisper anymore. It was a war drum. I sat up, a blanket wrapped around my shoulders as I scrolled in disbelief. Somewhere outside my room I could hear Jasper's voice on the phone, low, direct, unfazed. I padded into the kitchen barefoot, still in one of the oversized shirts he'd loaned me the night before. He glanced up when I entered. "You okay?" he asked. "I think so." He held out a steaming mug of coffee. "Still want it, or should I switch you to champagne now that you've taken over the internet?" I laughed softly, grateful for the joke. "Let's wait until afternoon." We sat in silence for a while on the terrace overlooking the sea, sipping coffee and letting the weight of last night settle. The sun was high, the waves calmer than I'd ever seen them. "You don't have to stay quiet now," Jasper said suddenly. I looked at him. "If you want to scream, cry, curse, do it," he added. "You've earned the right." I thought I'd feel lighter, I admitted. "But I don't. Not yet." "You will," he said. "You didn't just reclaim your legacy last night. You dragged 2 generations of manipulation into the light." He reached out and gently tucked a strand of hair behind my ear. The gesture was so natural I barely registered it, until the silence between us swelled. His hand lingered just a moment longer than it should have. Our eyes met, and everything between us stilled. But he didn't kiss me. He just looked at me like he saw every fracture, every wound, and didn't flinch. Later that day, after Jasper left for a meeting with the private investigators, I wandered the edge of the estate to clear my head. The air was cool, the garden full of rosemary and late-blooming peonies. I wandered toward the gate near the northern edge, following the stone path, and then I heard it. "Elena." I stopped cold. He was standing just outside the gate, his hair disheveled, his shirt wrinkled. He looked nothing like the man who once stood smiling in our engagement photos. He looked like desperation in a suit. "How did you get here?" I asked. "I followed the press," he said. "And I called 100 times. I ignored you. Take the hint." He held up his hands, stepping closer to the gate. "I just want to talk. Please. Just 5 minutes." "You had years to talk," I said, "but you waited until I went viral to remember my name." He flinched. "Elena, what happened? It wasn't supposed to be this way. Wasn't it?" I asked, arms crossed. "You let Leah walk down the aisle in my dress. You stood there while she lied. And you smiled." "I was under pressure," he said. "You don't understand. My father, Leah's family, they what?" I snapped. "Blackmailed you into signing a forged will? Coerced you into playing me for a fool? I never meant for you to get hurt," he said, voice tightening. "But Leah, she's dangerous. She said if I didn't go through with it, they'd ruin my career." I laughed bitterly. "You had a choice. You just chose comfort, profit, safety." "Elena." "No. Don't pretend this is about love. You didn't fight for me. You threw me away like an old suit." He stepped closer. "Maybe I didn't fight for you then," he said softly, "but I'm here now. I still care." "No," I said firmly. "You care about your reputation. And it's bleeding." His hand reached for the gate. And then I heard footsteps. Fast. Controlled. Intentional. Jasper. He stepped in front of me, placing himself directly between me and Caleb. His voice was ice. "I thought I told you to stay away." Caleb stiffened. "She deserves the truth. She already knows it." "You don't control her, Jasper." "No," Jasper said. "But I protect her. And I don't let people near her who treat her like a fallback option." The tension snapped taut. Caleb's jaw tightened. "You think this is over?" "No," Jasper said, stepping closer. "I know it is. Because if I see you on this property again, I won't just call security. I'll have you escorted out by the men who used to work for your father." Caleb looked at me, eyes pleading. "Elena, please." "I don't believe you," I said. His face twisted into something bitter, dangerous. Jasper didn't flinch. "Leave," he ordered quietly. Caleb hesitated 1 second too long. Jasper's hand moved toward his phone. And that was enough. Caleb turned and stormed down the path. When the gate slammed behind him, the silence that followed was so deep I nearly crumbled. My knees buckled. Jasper caught me instantly. "I've got you," he whispered, arms tightening around me. "I'm okay," I said against his chest. But my voice trembled. He didn't say anything. He just held me. Firm. Steady. Moving. I let out a shaky breath, tears pricking the corners of my eyes, not from fear this time, but from the weight of being protected. Finally. And in that moment I realized something. Jasper wasn't just helping me fight my battles. He had chosen to stand beside me. The first official court date was set for the following Monday. By Tuesday, every major business journal had published the phrase inheritance fraud scandal, at least twice. Jasper's team had compiled the evidence into a polished legal brief, time-stamped emails, shell company records, and 2 versions of my mother's will, one authentic, one forged. But that wasn't the part that stopped the world. It came the night before our final legal submission. I was sitting by the window, scrolling through press clippings, when Jasper entered the room holding a flash drive in his hand. "I think this changes everything," he said. I took it slowly, confused. "What is it?" "A former employee of your mother's. A research assistant. She went quiet after your mother passed. No one ever followed up with her. Why now?" "She heard the gala stream. Recognized the name. Said she had something saved for you. Something your mother left behind." He inserted the drive into the laptop. My heart was already racing before the folder opened. Inside was one file. I clicked. The audio crackled. Then my mother's voice filtered through, calm and unhurried. "Elena, if you're hearing this, something has gone wrong. But I want you to know I've already made my decisions. The company, the foundation, everything I've built. I made it for you. Only you. Your aunt. She's not to be trusted. If anything ever happens to me, don't let them convince you otherwise. I trust you more than anyone. You're stronger than they think." The file ended. I sat frozen for several long seconds. Then I replayed it. And again. Tears stung my eyes, but they didn't fall. I'd cried enough in silence. This time I let my mother's words steal me. "She left this for me," I whispered. "She trusted you," Jasper echoed. And now finally the world would hear it too. The next morning we submitted the final addendum to the lawsuit. The voice memo, along with sworn testimony from the assistant verifying its authenticity. The charges against my aunt and cousin expanded from civil inheritance disputes to criminal fraud, conspiracy, and falsification of legal records. Reporters hounded the courthouse steps. Social media erupted. Elena Moore files criminal charges. Audio proof included. Justice for Diana Moore. Her daughter strikes back. Leah Wright faces jail time in shocking twist to bridal scandal. And through it all, Jasper stood beside me, not just as a strategist but as a shield. He handled aggressive reporters. Walked me in and out of buildings through service corridors. Answered calls, filtered threats, and never left my side for more than a few hours. He didn't tell me to be strong. He just made sure I could be. The courthouse steps were a blur of flashing lights. I took a deep breath as we stepped out of the car. Jasper was beside me in a crisp navy suit, one hand resting gently at the small of my back. "Ready?" he asked. I looked at the cameras. The chaos. The crowd that had gathered with signs that read "We stand with Elena." Then I looked at him. "I was born ready," I said. We walked forward together. My heels clicked on the stone. Cameras flashed. People murmured. And I didn't flinch. Because this time I wasn't walking into battle alone. The verdict came in a crisp, clear voice from the judge's bench. Guilty on all counts. My aunt stood frozen, her once starched collar slightly wilted under courtroom lights. Leah stared straight ahead, jaw clenched, lips trembling, not in outrage anymore but in disbelief. Their empire, built on lies, manipulation, and stolen legacy, was crumbling. And I didn't have to say a single word. The judge's gavel fell. Cameras snapped. Lawyers scrambled. Reporters whispered into phones and recorders. I stood still, calm and quiet. Jasper reached for my hand, not publicly, not theatrically, just enough that our fingers touched. A silent assurance. We stepped outside into a sea of light and sound. The cheering surprised me. People clapped. Some chanted. Some simply stood with hands over hearts. I wasn't just a scandal anymore. I had become a symbol of reclamation. Of refusing to vanish. 2 weeks later, the paperwork was finalized. The Moore Foundation was restored in full under my name. The patents, the shares, the locked vault of intellectual property, all signed back to the rightful heir. My mother's name was cleared. Her legacy honored. Her voice, The voice from the recording had been played on every major news outlet. And her final words to me stayed etched in my ribs like armor. "You're stronger than they think." She had been right. That evening, Jasper called me to the cliffside, the same one I used to visit with my mother when I was a girl. The sun was setting, casting gold over the tide and turning the ocean into a field of mirrors. He stood waiting in a soft gray sweater and slacks, no tie, no performance, just him. "Come here," he said, holding out a hand. I walked toward him slowly, the wind catching my dress. I'd worn white, not like a bride but like a clean slate. "You've been quiet today," I said gently. He nodded, then gave me a look I hadn't seen before, unsure, almost nervous. "Because I don't want to ruin this moment," he said. "And I don't know how to say what I'm about to without sounding like a fool." "You don't do foolish," I whispered. "I do with you." I smiled. He took a breath. "I've stood by you in courtrooms, boardrooms, press storms and scandals. But if you'll let me, I want to stand beside you when there's no war left to fight." My throat caught. "I don't have a ring," he said quietly. "Because this isn't a proposal for a role." He stepped closer. "It's a question," he said. "Can I stay in your life, not as your lawyer, not as your protector, but as someone who's in love with you?" The world hushed around us. Waves roared, but I barely heard them. "Yes," I breathed. And then finally, he kissed me. It wasn't rushed, or hungry, or desperate. It was the kind of kiss that said, "I've seen every scar and still choose you." It was the kind of kiss you don't forget. The kind you build your life on. The end.